The story begins on a sunny morning. A young man named Akira is in his bedroom testing an online game when his opponents all disconnect at the same time. He decides it is time to go to class. He eats breakfast in another room that is extremely messy, then heads out the door. As he walks to school, he plays Tetris on his phone because it is something he is deeply passionate about and spends countless hours on. Because of this, his classmates see him as strange, even though his grades are excellent. He finds memorization very easy and has no problem keeping up academically. But as he walks and thinks to himself, he realizes just how boring his life feels. Then suddenly, a car pulls up right in front of him along with a group of people. A man steps out of the car dressed in green with his face completely covered in bandages. In one single blow, this man destroys an entire van. He turns toward Akira and tries to attack him. Akira dodges without much difficulty and flees as fast as he can, grabbing a bicycle. He starts racing through the city trying to shake the strange man, but no matter what he does, the pursuer will not stop following him. So Akira decides to treat it like a game. He heads toward a ruined building to set a trap inside. Once there, he realizes quickly that this is not a normal human being. The man leaps enormous distances like an animal and hits with incredible force. But the trap still works. Akira manages to drop a heavy piece of metal barrel directly onto the man, wounding him badly. Even through the injuries, the man tries to jump at Akira to grab him, but Akira grabs an iron bar and defends himself, knocking him out in one shot. Then a girl with the appearance of a cat appears. She tells Akira she did not expect him to be able to handle her pet, but that what just happened is all part of a game he cannot win. A moment later, a shot tears right through Akira's arm, leaving a massive hole, and he collapses. When he wakes up, he finds himself inside a strange room surrounded by people he has never met, all of them handcuffed just like him. The cat girl appears again and introduces herself as Mion, who will be their guide from this point forward. Mion begins explaining that the existence of every single person in that room has been completely erased from the real world. They no longer have any human rights. At that moment, a man in the group interrupts her. She takes the opportunity to move on to the second important point of her speech. Suddenly, the man falls to the floor, shot through the chest, and we see that Mion has transformed her own arm into a kind of cannon. She continues explaining. In exchange for taking everything they had in their previous lives, each person in that room has been given a special power that will be monitored at all times. However, she makes it very clear that if they are not useful, they will be removed from the program, so they need to work hard to prove they deserve to be there. She then begins laying out the rules. The handcuffs are there to contain their new powers, but they will disappear once a green light activates. After that, they are free to kill or hurt anyone they want, because that is completely allowed in this program. Mion then walks over to a girl with glasses named Ringo and asks her if she has any questions. Ringo does not want to speak up. Mion continues going around the room asking each participant, including a boy named Madoka and another named Shin, if they want to know anything more. Shin asks what all of this even is and what he is doing there, but Mion answers that it is not something she is able to tell him. Then a blonde girl named Yuri steps forward and asks the real question, why were they specifically chosen? Mion sighs as if the answer is a bit boring, but finally tells them all that they were selected completely at random. Right at that moment, a woman named Yui appears and warns Mion that the first trial needs to start very soon. Mion leads the group outside. Each participant goes to their own room where they receive a black card that explains their power. Meanwhile, Mion and another observer named Yang watch everything through cameras and single out Akira as the favorite of the program. Akira leans against a wall in his room. Suddenly, he hears a huge explosion from somewhere else in the building and concludes that someone is already testing their power. He realizes that by making it so there is no penalty for hurting or killing anyone, Mion is essentially pushing them all to destroy each other. The first fight begins. Akira is matched against Madoka, a boy who has always hated going to class. Madoka warns him that he should surrender because his power makes the fight pointless. A moment later, the green light activates and the battle begins. Madoka turns a stick he is carrying into a razor-sharp sword and tries to cut Akira with it. Akira dodges and escapes. He starts leading Madoka through different rooms and playing tricks on him to make him believe he does not want to use his own power. After a while, Akira turns to Madoka and tells him that he has already seen his ability and that it is extremely dangerous, which is exactly why he has been holding back. Then Akira reveals that his power is transforming his arm into a powerful cannon, exactly the same as Mion's. This terrifies Madoka completely. Akira transforms his arm just like Mion did earlier and fires, wounding his opponent badly. Madoka sees what he is dealing with and surrenders. Mion declares the first fight over with Akira as the winner. She then asks him why he did not use such a terrifying power right from the start. But she immediately answers her own question by explaining to Yui that the cannon is not actually his real ability. Akira's true power is that the enemy believes he has whatever ability he wants them to believe he has, and he has to use it at exactly the right moment to make it most effective. This is why he chose Mion as the model for his first fight, since both he and Madoka had already witnessed what she could do with the cannon, which meant it was something he could use to guarantee his victory. Mion tells Yui that she trusts Akira and refers to him as her prince, saying she expects great things from him. Akira is escorted away by guards after his fight. On the way he passes Yuri heading toward her own trial. We then learn the story of how Yuri ended up here, and we discover that she also deeply hates the word coincidence. It turned out that she got into trouble because she found a young man badly injured and offered to help him. That boy became obsessed with her and started following her and looking for her constantly, to the point of causing her serious trust issues. Her mother was also a problem, because she would bring strange men home that she met by chance whenever she went out drinking. One night her mother brought a man over and got completely drunk with him, so they asked Yuri to take care of the man's young daughter. Yuri was exhausted by how many bad things in her life kept happening by chance, but the last incident was the one that pushed her over the edge. One afternoon, completely by coincidence, Yuri ran into her harasser on top of a building where he was trying to take his own life. She climbed up to help him, but he took that moment to grab her and throw both of them off the building together. After that, she ended up inside Mion's games. Now all she wants is to desperately find a way to get back home. Back in the present, we see that Yuri is very angry about being told she was selected by random chance and feels deeply frustrated about being in that place at all. She decides to open the envelope containing the information about her power and tests it. We realize that the huge explosion Akira heard earlier was actually caused by Yuri, though we are not shown clearly yet what her power is. Then we see another memory from Yuri's life, in which she comes home one afternoon and finds the young daughter of her mother's new boyfriend there completely alone. Yuri decides to cook for the little girl and give her a bath since she is hungry and dirty because her father does not take care of her. However, when they are about to get in the bath together, Yuri notices strange marks on the girl's back. In that moment, she remembers that her own mother also treated her very badly when she was small, and used to tell her that she had ruined her entire life. Back in the present, Yuri walks forward with determination, deciding that instead of running away from all her problems, she is going to win this trial and get out of that place. Her first opponent turns out to be a muscular man, who was previously a powerful executive at a company who used to pay students for their company. When one of them tried to blackmail him after discovering how much money he handled, he strangled her, and that is when his transformation began. He went from being a fat and repressed man to having a muscular body and actively going out to hunt his preferred prey, which was young women. His power allows him to read the emotional state of his rival and take advantage of it, and he has a very strong fixation on female students. Throughout the entire fight, he tries to make Yuri uncomfortable, going as far as taking off his own clothes. Eventually, he gets his hands on her and grabs her, then tells her what a great coincidence it is that his very first opponent turned out to be a student. The moment she hears the word coincidence, Yuri fills with rage and her power activates. She crushes his arm by squeezing it until it completely deforms and breaks free from his grip. We learn that Yuri's power is to multiply her physical abilities by 5. It is instinctive and difficult to control deliberately, but when she feels genuine danger, she starts hitting the disgusting man over and over until he is completely out of the fight. She wins her round. The only thing that matters to Yuri is getting back home to Riria, the little girl she was looking after sometimes, and that is entirely the reason she wants to win all of this. Shortly after, a guard brings Akira to another room where he finds Madoka, Shin, Yuri, and one more man waiting. The next trial is a team battle with 5 members per side. The group has 2 hours to prepare for the next fight. The unknown man introduces himself as Zanibas and begins explaining his power, which is to transform buttons into ropes, something that sounds almost completely useless. Then each person explains their ability. Shin reveals that his is becoming invisible for 2 seconds. Though he says he has not had to use it yet, since before all of this he practiced wrestling and has a significant physical advantage over most rivals. Akira decides it is better not to reveal his real power to the group and sticks to the story that his ability is transforming his arm into a cannon. After this, Akira asks Madoka how his injury is doing. Madoka tells him that after the fight they treated it and gave him some medication, but it was not much. This is because for this program they are all completely disposable. 2 hours later the five teammates arrive at a combat ring where they find their rival team of 4 people, plus a fifth who is sitting far away from the others and avoiding everyone's eyes. Mion communicates the rules of this fight from the control room. Akira immediately realizes they have been tricked. The fight actually consists of individual one-on-one matches where each person can win by knocking an opponent off the ring, killing them, or making them surrender. Forming teams of 5 was simply an excuse from Mion to make everyone reveal their powers and expose themselves to future rivals. The first match is announced as Zaniba's against a woman with long red hair named Rin. From the start, Rin tries to convince Zaniba's to surrender since she does not enjoy fighting and proposes they come to an agreement instead. Zaniba's agrees because he also does not want a fight and would rather do everything possible to survive. So they decide to flip a coin to determine who has to leave the ring. However, the moment Zaniba's tosses the coin and glances away, crystalline shards appear piercing through his entire body and he instantly collapses to the floor dead. Akira tries to figure out how Rin's power works since she is clearly committed to killing rather than negotiating, but he cannot work it out. Doctors come to remove Zaniba's lifeless body. Madoka starts arguing with Shin and Yuri about what just happened after realizing that fighting each other is the worst thing they can do in their position. Akira tells them all to save their comments for later. The next fight is announced as Shin against Ringo. Although she looks completely calm and unbothered, the moment Shin moves toward her, Ringo raises one arm and declares she surrenders right then and there. This surprises everyone. Once she returns to her team, we learn that the ability Ringo has been pretending to have is copying the opponent's power. She explains that she was unable to do this against Shin, which means there must be a condition that has to be met for it to activate, and with her physical abilities alone, she simply cannot beat him. Rin becomes very angry at Ringo and grabs her by the throat and threatens her, saying that because of her they might lose the entire trial. At that moment, another girl named Siko steps in and calms Rin down, telling her that she will win her own round easily because her power gives her a massive advantage. We then learn that Ringo's true ability is to copy 1/10 of an opponent's power once it activates. This ability also lets her learn what that power actually is. But she already knew from the beginning that it would be impossible to activate against Shin, which is why she surrendered immediately. The next fight is Siko against Madoka. The moment both of them step into the ring and their handcuffs deactivate, they launch at each other immediately. Siko's power is to throw marbles that become enormous and extremely heavy when she activates them. She starts hammering Madoka with them, but he keeps deflecting them with his wooden stick. Siko realizes he is not going to be easy to beat, and starts throwing marbles in sets of 3 at a time. Faced with this, Madoka decides to activate his power and converts the stick into a sword, which he uses to slice one of the giant balls completely in half. We learn that Madoka's real power is to transform a stick into a sword that can cut through absolutely anything in front of it. Siko keeps smashing him with the giant balls from every direction until he is surrounded. He reminds her that he can just cut through anything she throws. She responds by launching one marble while jumping into the air, and while he destroys it, she prepares her final attack. But just when she is about to fire, the strike breaks and the marble falls to the floor without transforming. This is because Madoka had already snapped his stick into 2 pieces before cutting the first ball, creating a second smaller sword, which he used to destroy both attacks at once and leave her completely out of ammunition. Madoka insists she surrender. Instead, Siko thanks him for lowering his guard, and we see that the marble from earlier has been rolling quietly across the floor and has reached his feet. She activates it, and it explodes directly into his most sensitive spot. Madoka collapses unconscious from the pain. When he wakes up, Akira asks him how he could possibly have lost like that. After a while, the ring is ready again for the next to last fight. Akira steps in against a man named Kuki, who was a simple worker tired of his life because he always felt like a background character and never felt valued. He died when a steel beam fell on him out in the street. Akira decides to experiment with his power and thinks about who he can count as a real enemy in this situation. He turns toward Madoka and tells him loudly that he is not going to forgive him for losing his round and affecting the entire team. This causes Akira's arm to transform into the cannon again, and he fires right next to Madoka. This makes practically everyone watching believe they have just seen his real power. Kuki is terrified of what he is about to face. However, when Akira fires at Kuki, the man crouches down and presses his hands flat against the floor in fear, and the bullet disappears. The same thing happens with every shot Akira fires at him. Siko and Ringo start cheering Kuki on from the sideline. Rin tells him that if he wins the fight, they will reward him however he wants. This encourages him and he starts feeling more confident. But then suddenly a shoe slaps him in the face out of nowhere. Akira appears directly behind him and points the cannon at his head at point-blank range, warning him that at this distance there is no way to stop it. He tells Kuki to raise his hands and informs him that he has already figured out his power. Kuki's ability is to make anything that impacts with him disappear, but only when his hands are pressed flat against the ground. With that revealed, the fight ends with Akira as the winner, having once again used the false power he borrowed from Mion. The final fight begins. Yuri steps into the ring, and her opponent turns out to be none other than the harasser who threw himself off the building with her. The moment she sees him, she fills with absolute fury and activates her power completely. He is not afraid in the slightest and stands ready to take whatever she gives him. His power is to make his body as hard as iron. Shin begins doubting whether Yuri can actually win against this. But the moment the green light activates, she charges straight at him. And with a single punch, she not only launches him right out of the ring, but causes serious damage to him as well. Akira then explains to Shin that even though she has the body of an average student, a punch uses much more than just arm strength. It uses speed, force, and the entire body working together, which means she is not just multiplying 5 abilities by 5 but the whole combination. With that, Akira reaches the conclusion that Yuri's power might actually be the strongest of anyone he has seen. He files this away and already plans to use it to his advantage at some point. This marks the defeat of the opposing team. Mion appears and tells them they will be receiving a punishment very soon. Guards escort the winning team to another room where the girls from the losing team serve them food while dressed as bunnies. While they are eating, Yuri tells Akira that her hand has been hurting ever since she punched her opponent. He pulls out a handkerchief decorated with little bears and presses it against Yuri's hand to try to ease the pain. And it is very clear that he is also using this moment to start winning her over. Madoka tries to make a comment putting himself above Ringo, but Akira reminds him that he is the only person on the entire team who actually lost his fight, and then jokes that by that logic Madoka should also be dressed as a bunny right now. This impresses Ringo greatly and also makes her quite embarrassed. Shortly after, Mion announces the next trial. Losers and winners are split up again. Each person is assigned a specific path to follow individually. Shin and Madoka each head off on their own path. At that moment, Akira takes the chance to tell Yuri that the handkerchief is very important to him, so he asks her to survive and return it to him later. This causes her to blush and she walks away holding on to it. This is the beginning of Akira's plan to win Yuri over so he can eventually use her extraordinary and unique ability. After a while, Akira arrives in a room, receives his phone, and reads the instructions for the next trial. They are straightforward. He starts with 100 points and must reduce that number down to just 1 point in under 30 minutes to win. A door opens and Akira steps outside into what appears to be a forest in the exterior. There are signs that others have been there before him. A voice announces over the loudspeaker that each person eliminated in Block A is worth 10 points and the game begins right now. Akira starts running forward. Suddenly, a boy with blonde hair cuts him off and tells him he wants to recruit him. At that same moment, Yuri comes sprinting past, chased by a group of men who look very rough and strange. She runs straight to Akira. Once they are standing together, the men reveal they belong to the Red Dragon group and say they want both of the girls, referring to Akira as a girl too, until one of them, who seems like a complete pervert, points out that Akira is actually a man. So they decide to handle things the hard way. The blonde boy seems to belong to a group called Green, and he steps in between the men and Akira and Yuri. He transforms a stick into a large bow with what appears to be an infinite supply of arrows and prepares to attack the red group. He tells Akira and Yuri to escape while he distracts the others, but the Reds have a secret weapon that nobody counted on. The perverted man from before, whose name is Matsushita, turns out to have the exact same cannon arm that Mion uses, and he points it directly at all 3 of the young people. Yuri is shocked and warns Akira that he has the same ability as her. But Akira quickly realizes this actually gives him an advantage, since the Reds were not expecting it. The moment Yuri mentions the cannon out loud, the Reds become convinced that Akira must also have that power. Akira transforms his arm once more and fires at the red group, though he does not actually hurt anyone. Then an arrow from the blonde boy serves as a second warning. Even so, Matsushita fires a shot at Akira as he tries to escape. Akira had already predicted this would happen, so the moment Matsushita fires, Akira fires back simultaneously, and using the smoke and confusion from both blasts they manage to get away. The red men watch them escape and immediately start panicking about how they are going to explain this to their boss. After a little while, the blonde boy introduces himself to Akira and Yuri. His name is Seidu, and he tells them he belongs to one of the factions in this place. Later, Seidu leads them to the green faction base, where a whole group of people work and live together as if it were a small village. In fact, once they step inside, they see a small girl carrying a baby, and the baby is not wearing any handcuffs because this child was born inside the games. Seidu takes them to the base meeting room and asks them to wait while he goes to speak with the leader. Left alone, Yuri asks Akira if he chose this faction because he thinks they are good people. He tells her that is not the only reason. In a game like this, someone cannot afford to be protecting the weak unless they have very powerful people with very special abilities backing them up. So he believes this group must have some serious power behind them to have built all of this. A moment later, Seidu returns and brings them to meet the leader of the base, an old man named Shirasagi. The man thanks them for saving Seidu. Both Akira and Yuri respond that it was actually the other way around and Seidu was the one who saved them. Shirasagi then asks about their powers. When he hears that Akira supposedly has the cannon, he is very happy to have someone that strong on their side. Then it is Yuri's turn. She tells him that her power multiplies her physical capabilities by 5. When both the old man and Seidu hear this, they nearly cry from joy. Because if Akira's cannon is already Class A, then Yuri's ability is even rarer and more powerful than that. Shirasagi then explains how the third trial actually works and reveals how their group lives together inside it. Points are earned by completing a series of missions given by the organization, and there is no need to kill anyone. However, the old man continues by explaining that when he first arrived, everyone split into small groups to complete missions and coexist peacefully, until the leader of the opposing faction showed up and started kidnapping people and doing deeply disturbing things. Their goal is not to pass the trials. They simply want to build their own kingdom here, because nothing guarantees that the fourth phase will not be something even worse than what they have already faced. Meanwhile, we see the Red Dragon group returning and explaining to their leader Ikai that the cannon boy escaped. Right beside this giant of a man stands Rin, who we had seen earlier carrying a severed head as casually as if it were nothing. Ikai pretends he does not care that they let Akira escape and offers his people a beer, but the moment one of them steps forward to take it, Ikai smashes the bottle across his face, breaking it instantly and leaving the man's face completely covered in blood. The red team's subleader, whose name is Kuroa, steps in and asks Ikai not to cause such a scene over this. He then tells his leader that the reason Akira managed to escape from 4 of their people is probably because he has a very unusual power just like them, and this grabs Ikai's full attention. This means he can no longer afford to just let it go. Back in the green base, Shirasagi continues explaining to the group that the red faction enslaves everyone they capture. When Yuri hears this, she immediately decides she wants to help them, since it reminds her of the abuse the father of Riria used to commit against that little girl. They are also told that there is a third faction called the Blue Team who have very particular abilities and have declared themselves neutral. Shirasagi tries to convince Akira to formally join his side. But Akira walks straight toward his desk and raises his hand, forming the cannon to point at him. The old man asks if he is planning to take him as a hostage and choose a different path. Akira is alarmed when the cannon simply does not activate. He starts wondering whether the old man does not actually believe it is his real power, or whether he has an ability that disables it. But then he asks Yuri to stop pointing at the man, and immediately the cannon activates. Shirasagi smiles with satisfaction, glad to confirm that the power Akira told them about is real. He then challenges Akira to fire if he wants and see where it leads him. A moment later, the cannon fires, but absolutely nothing happens. Shirasagi's power repels even Akira's cannon completely. This convinces Akira that the old man's ability is more than enough to stand up against the Reds. So right then, he decides to join Seidu's side and the Green faction. Then a woman named Momoko arrives and informs the leader that a large number of new members are on their way to the base, which creates a problem because there are not enough rooms for everyone. Akira proposes sharing his room with Yuri. She immediately starts imagining very strange scenarios in her head, which does not help at all when she enters the room and finds a contraceptive sitting on the bed. She hides it very nervously. After that, Akira thanks her for agreeing to share the room, explaining that he wanted to be alone with her. He then asks her to trust him and says he is going to reveal a great secret to her, his true power. He writes on a piece of paper that his power is telepathy, then asks Yuri to concentrate and try to connect her mind with his. She decides to believe him, and Akira activates his ability. They actually succeed in communicating telepathically. Akira explains through this mental link that he is certain they are being watched constantly, since the leader is a very careful man who would keep an eye on all of them until he was sure whether they were dangerous or useful to the community. After this, Yuri tells him her story, and Akira comes to understand that she wants to return home specifically to take care of Riria, because the little girl has absolutely no one else. Akira then tells Yuri that for his part he has no interest in going back. His only goal is to win the game and get his rematch against Mion. In that time spent together, Akira becomes convinced that Yuri is someone he can genuinely trust, so he decides to make her a promise. He asks her to shake his hand and promises that he will get her back home, but she must keep his real ability an absolute secret. He then reveals what that ability actually is. His power is that the enemy believes he has whatever ability he wants them to think he has. This confuses Yuri quite a bit. Suddenly, everyone receives a message on their phones from Mion announcing the next mission that will take place tomorrow, which turns out to be a hunt. When they hear this news, Ikai and his group immediately decide they will sacrifice the slaves they have been keeping in order to complete the mission. The following day, everyone gathers together. The Green leader divides his people into various teams and Yuri forms her own duo with Akira. While they walk to the mission location, Akira communicates with her telepathically. She is somewhat worried. He explains that he has not been able to gather any information yet about the other player's powers, but he needs to act before anyone discovers the truth about his own. Even so, he admits to himself that it is very difficult to accept the fact that he has put his life in Yuri's hands. Soon, everyone arrives at the ruins of Block D. Mion appears there to begin the hunt. From above, men who look exactly like the bandaged creature that attacked Akira on his way to school drop down and prepare to fight. Mion explains that each monster they eliminate earns them 30 points, and the trial will only end when all the monsters are dead or all the players are dead. Akira begins fighting using the cannon, following a strategy he worked out with Yuri beforehand. He asked her to think of his power as telepathy when they are fighting together, since the rest of the team believes it is the cannon. This way he can use both powers at the same time without anyone else knowing. He has also found a very specific way to make this work. By having formed a duo with Yuri and operating somewhat independently, the leader keeps surveillance on them through trusted observers. Since those observers believe his power is the cannon, he can continue using it visibly while keeping the telepathy completely hidden. Little by little, the other members of the Green team also start taking down monsters using their abilities. There is a man who can withstand direct hits from the creatures, a woman who fights with a giant sword, and even a religious woman whose power involves using a doll that she throws at her opponents to damage them. Then the red team arrives, led by Ikai and Kuroa, and behind them is a large group of enslaved people who owe them favors. Shirasagi orders his group to pull back so they do not reveal their powers, and so the red team becomes the main target for the remaining monsters. However, Kuroa's plan is to use his power to force the enslaved players he brought with him to walk straight into the monsters and get slaughtered. This creates a serious problem for Shirasagi, who does not want innocent people to die. He tells his group to save as many of them as they can while retreating as quickly as possible. Among the enslaved group is Ringo herself, who is saved by Akira and Yuri just moments before a monster can kill her. The red team leaders watch everything from the top of the ruins without intervening, which is fully permitted. But then Mion decides to give the game a little more excitement and releases her secret weapon, another much larger monster named byou, which is a creature assembled from parts of all the other monsters. Akira tries to bring it down with the cannon, but it does absolutely nothing. The blast from the cannon sends Akira crashing back into a tree, and Shirasagi has to step in and shield him. The old man asks if Akira can move. When Akira confirms he can, Shirasagi tells him to get away from this monster because it is his problem to deal with. At this point, Shirasagi's power is finally revealed, even though he did not want to use it in front of Ikai and Kuroa. He is a mediator, and his ability allows him to negotiate peacefully with any opponent. However, this power can also be used offensively when the negotiation does not reach a good outcome, and that is exactly what ends up happening. Shirasagi tries to protect himself from Byou as much as possible, but the monster does not stop. So he activates the offensive side of his ability and opens a hole straight through the creature's chest. Byou falls defeated. But the old man has also taken damage in the process, because that is the downside of his ability. However, at that moment, Byou begins devouring all the other fallen monsters and regenerates completely, closing the wound Shirasagi gave it. Mion announces that the second phase of the fight has begun, explaining that many bosses in video games do exactly this kind of thing. The monster recovers and attacks Shirasagi again, and now the old man can barely defend himself because one of his arms has been badly wounded. Yuri tries to get to him to help, but Seidu and Akira hold her back because it is too dangerous. Akira reminds her that she needs to get home to Riria. But Yuri gets angry because all of that just sounds like excuses to her, so she breaks free from both of them and runs toward the old man to protect him with her power. Shirasagi takes the monster's attack with one arm while Yuri arrives and launches a powerful kick in the air that pushes the creature back hard. But right away the monster comes at them again. She grabs Shirasagi and throws herself backward with him to dodge the strike. Just as Byou is about to charge again, it takes a cannon shot from Akira, and Mion turns her focus back on him. This time Akira decides to try something new with Yuri, but to do it, he needs to reach a location where the enemies watching from above cannot see him. She tries to warn him telepathically that this is far too risky while they dodge the monster and communicate at the same time. Up above, Ikai tells Kuroa that Akira looks like an idiot fighting this way since none of his attacks are doing anything to the monster. But Kuroa is much more observant and tells his brother that Akira seems to be working toward a plan that goes well beyond what they are seeing on the surface. Akira finds a spot in the ruins where the enemies above have no line of sight. He heads there with Byou pursuing him. Once the creature has him cornered, he asks Yuri to follow the plan and they join their hands together and concentrate on something. Byou delivers a devastating blow that fills the area with rubble and debris, but somehow Akira is completely unharmed. Then suddenly he appears directly in front of the creature and presses the cannon straight inside its mouth and fires from inside its head. Yuri runs toward him and hugs him tightly for doing something that dangerous, which surprises Akira and immediately embarrasses her. But right then Byou reappears with its head full of wounds and tries to attack both of them. At that moment, Ikai drops down and punches the creature with a single blow that rips its head completely off, defeating it without the slightest effort. Ikai stands before Akira and tells him he has noticed that the cannon works best at extremely close range. He also mentions that he thinks Akira dodged the creature's attack earlier purely by luck, which he finds genuinely interesting. But before anything more can happen, Yuri tries to attack Ikai after seeing all the innocent people whose deaths he caused. Despite her immense strength, Ikai stops her kick as if it is nothing at all, grabs her by the leg, and throws both her and Akira rolling across the ground. He then calmly asks them if they are done, wondering if they want to keep fighting him. But at that moment, Mion fires her cannon at Ikai's feet and tells him that she has not declared the trial finished yet. She then walks up to the group of players and tells them she and her team have come up with the next mission to finally put an end to the conflict between the factions. This mission is called the King's Game, and it consists of capturing the phone belonging to the leader of the opposing faction to win. The red team finds this idea far too boring and simple. Mion considers how she should adjust the rules and proposes that maybe it would be interesting to activate the leader's handcuffs so they cannot use their powers. The moment both Akira and Ikai hear this, they each immediately picture how easily they could eliminate the other side's leader without their ability protecting them. But Ikai interrupts Mion and says he wants to add something to the game if she finds it interesting. The red team proposes that the mission should not end simply when they capture the leader's phone, but that every single member of the opposing faction must die as well. This gets Mion's full attention. Shirasagi shouts that this cannot be the rule because his faction has women and small children. Despite his protest, Mion responds that neither team has any rights whatsoever, and that if they do not accept the conditions, they will be fighting each other right now instead. With no real choice left, the green leader pulls back to prepare his group for the mission. Akira returns to the base together with the leader and Yuri. Once there, the old man offers Yuri the chance to go wash up, which she accepts with great enthusiasm. When she leaves, Shirasagi whispers to Akira that once his arm has been treated, he should come to his room privately, because he wants to tell him something. Shortly after Akira visits Shirasagi, and the old man asks what his real power is, since he knows that Akira did not dodge Mayu purely by luck. Akira admits that the cannon is not his true ability, but refuses to say anything more, since Shirasagi also keeps his own secrets. However, he does promise the old man that he will use his real ability to finish the red team once and for all. Elsewhere in the forest, a red faction member attacks a young girl named Erika. Shin appears right at that moment and defends her. Meanwhile, we are shown a memory from Ringo's past in which she first met Akira through an online game. Where his username was simply K, she later discovered his real identity and became a fan of his because of his extraordinary gaming skills. So after being rescued by both Yuri and Akira, Ringo decides she wants to find him and thank him and also confess how much she admires him. Shin arrives at the village together with the young girl. There they reunite with Akira and Yuri is glad to see Shin since he is already a friend of Akira's. The Green leader tells Shin to make himself at home and offers him protection for at least this coming week. Right after that, Mion's voice comes through the loudspeaker reminding everyone that there are only 7 days left before the King's game mission begins. After hearing this, Akira walks away alone and thinks through who the most dangerous enemy will be. Ikai will have his abilities restricted during the battle, but Kuroa is the one responsible for so many people dying because of his power, which essentially enslaves people by trapping them in chains of debt. This is an enormous problem. But while Akira is alone, Ringo finds him, wanting to thank him. However, she also uses that moment to bring up something important. She tells him she wants to talk about his real power, and this makes him very nervous. He grabs her arm and pulls her into one of the nearby houses. Once they are inside, she reminds him that her ability allows her to learn and copy 1/10 of an opponent's power once it activates. She tells him she needs his help. Ringo understands that his power also depends on other people just like hers does, so she asks him to let her be his partner so they can help each other. Akira asks her directly if she knows the powers of the red team. She nods. Shortly after, she steps out of the house and immediately walks straight into Yuri, who had been watching everything from the beginning. The next morning, Akira goes to find Yuri and asks her to spend a few days with him since he is planning to go talk with the blue faction. Meanwhile, a red faction servant named Yuki welcomes a prisoner at the base, a man who escaped from the green side and has brought news. Inside the red base, the members are busy showering Rin with attention when suddenly a very strange girl bursts in. This girl, whose name is Renka, immediately asks what Rin is doing there and attacks her the moment Rin tries to introduce herself, because according to the others, Renka absolutely hates women. But Rin does not even flinch at her words and casually mocks her, saying that Renka is actually a man on the inside. Kuroa then appears to step between them, and Renka instantly goes completely submissive and affectionate toward him. Seeing someone this unstable and dangerous around makes the entire Red Dragon faction realize just how serious the situation around them is getting. Shortly after, another new member arrives. An old man named Kamui rolls into the room on a skateboard and then dissolves it with his power. Kuroa warns him that he does not want any trouble here. A little while later, Yuki comes through the door with the escaped prisoner from the green side. The subleader asks Yuki where a man named Rindo is, and Yuki answers that he went to test his sword on their hostages. Yuki then continues and says that the young man he has brought with him has something very important to share with them. The man steps forward and explains the situation. It seems there is an informant inside the green base who managed to get information about Akira. Kuroa's suspicion is confirmed when the escaped man tells him that Akira survived the monster's blow and then went on to use the cannon afterward. This means the cannon is a fake. Kuroa immediately goes to find Ikai, who is training with one of his monsters, and tells him directly that Akira's cannon ability is not real. Meanwhile, Akira and Yuri continue on their way toward the blue faction base, but they stop briefly in the forest to test something. Akira tries to borrow Yuri's ability of multiplying his physical capabilities by 5. It goes very badly. He cannot get his body to respond the way hers does when the power activates. He concludes that this is simply because she is a natural prodigy. He then reveals that what he used to dodge Mayu was actually a teleportation ability he borrowed from another member of the Green faction. But it is not something they can use in the upcoming battle since it is far too risky and difficult to rely on. They try something different. Akira asks Yuri to imagine him transforming into some kind of thing, but this is too vague and abstract for her to visualize properly. So he makes it more specific and asks her to imagine him transforming into someone she can clearly picture in her mind. He hides behind a tree, activates his power, and when he steps back out he has transformed into Ringo. This time it works perfectly, because instead of imagining something as broad as any kind of thing at all, she focused on a specific person she can visualize. However, when Akira uses his power to see who he has become, he asks Yuri about it, and she wants to know why he chose Ringo in particular. That is when he finds out that Yuri had actually seen them going into the building together the other time. He explains everything that happened and the agreement he made with Ringo. He tells Yuri he cannot share the details of Ringo's power since that was part of the deal, but that Ringo will help them in the battle. He also explains that the other condition of the agreement was that Yuri needed to know about it, so that if Akira were ever to betray her, she would immediately suspect him. After a while, Akira meets with the blue faction leader, who is accompanied by Madoka and two other players. This young man is named Amodo and he always looks either tired or completely bored, though when he sees Yuri it becomes clear he also has something of a perverted streak. Without wasting any time, Akira tells him he wants to recruit some blue faction players for the battle against the red team. He offers 200 points to each participant and 500 extra to anyone who manages to steal a phone from a red faction member. This stuns Amodo's companions, but Amodo himself refuses the offer because he has something better in mind and instead asks Akira to hand over Yuri. Akira responds immediately without hesitation, saying he is not giving her up because she is worth more than 10 or 20 players put together. This way, Akira manages to plant a seed of uncertainty in Amodo's mind, telling him that if he wants her, he will have to fight for her, but Amodo has no interest in risking his life before any of this is decided. Before he leaves, the blue leader tells Akira he will pass his message along even though he already knows how the king's game is going to end. Once the three blue players walk away, Madoka tells Akira that he has decided to join the red faction and fight against him. Akira could not care less and simply accepts his decision without another word, then walks away with Yuri. At sunset, both of them arrive back at the green base carrying bags full of food to feed everyone that evening. Shortly after, Akira visits the red faction's former prisoners and some of them ask if they can help in some capacity, even just as medical support. He takes them to Shirasagi, and the leader approves the proposal because his philosophy is fundamentally different from that of the Reds. That night, everyone eats the meat Akira and Yuri brought as they prepare for the king's game that begins tomorrow. We then see Akira step away to speak privately with Ringo about the pact they made not long ago. The night continues. The next morning, the green team arrives at the zone where the battle will take place, a location Akira had already scouted and explored carefully with Yuri during the days leading up to today. Once there, they receive new instructions on their phones from Mion about the mission they are about to begin. The objective is to steal the phones belonging to the enemy players. If a phone moves more than 3 meters away from its owner, it counts as a kill, and the owner's handcuffs will reactivate, leaving them completely powerless and exposed to their rivals. Every phone stolen earns 1 point. Additional points can also be collected from the 5 towers spread across the area. These points can then be exchanged for advantages during the mission, such as revealing the position of an enemy or stealing their power. The game ends when someone manages to destroy the rival king's phone. After hearing all of this, both teams designate who their king is and the king's game begins. The green team's strategy is to capture at least 3 of the 5 towers and hold them, protect Shirasagi, and try to get their hands on Ikai's phone using Yuri's power. Shortly after, Seidu captures the first tower and holds it safely alongside other players. On another side, Asuka, the woman who fights with the enormous sword, heads toward the next tower when problems start. The ground suddenly begins to shake and a wall right next to them crumbles apart, and through the gap appears the Red King himself. Everyone hears what is happening through their phones, but before anyone can do anything, Ikai eliminates 2 of their teammates instantly. Asuka activates her power and transforms a stick into her massive sword to attack the Red King. He dodges every single one of her cuts without difficulty until he eventually grabs the sword with one hand. But this is exactly what Asuka wanted, because her power also allows her to alter the weight of the sword itself. While he is holding it, she increases the weight as much as she possibly can in an attempt to crush him underneath it. For a brief moment it seems to work and catches him completely by surprise, but he manages to destroy the sword before it can seriously injure him. He then delivers a kick that launches Asuka up into the ceiling and sends her crashing into a wall, leaving her severely injured and without a weapon. Shirasagi concludes that this is clearly a trap set by Kuroa, using Ikai himself as bait. Meanwhile, Shin tries to protect Jerk because his ability is to create a barrier that protects the base. But when the other members of his group go to help Asuka, Jerk senses someone approaching. Seidu and his companions are cut off by Kamui, who drops an entire tree across their path and disintegrates one of them instantly. Renka goes on to massacre dozens of Green faction members using her miniature helicopters. Rindo does the same with his sword. Then we see that Shin has lost a hand to Yuki. Meanwhile, Rin manages to find Akira. He tries to negotiate an exchange with her while staying alert to anything she might try. She tells him they are alike because both of them will do whatever it takes to survive, and in his case that means using the green team and using her. She then asks about Yuri. He tells her it is none of her business where Yuri is. Rin tries to seduce him. He immediately starts walking away quickly and tells her the only thing he has any interest in is the exchange between them, nothing more than that. The moment he walks away, Rin takes out her phone and contacts someone to report that she has found Akira. On the other side, we learn that Shin has now lost his entire arm. It turns out the person Jerk had detected earlier was Yuki. Yuki asked Shin where the rest of his team was positioned, but Shin refused to reveal anything and instead tried to attack the servant. When Yuki grabbed him, he activated his power, touching the handcuffs on Shin's wrists and causing them to shrink dramatically. This is how he had been killing the rest of the people in that area, using thin red threads of high-tech fiber that shrink and cut through anything they wrap around. Shin continues to fight back even as Yuki keeps cutting away at different parts of his body and wounding him further. His rival has filled the entire surrounding terrain with these fiber threads, using them to shrink objects and kill anyone caught inside them. This leads Shin to ask him directly how many people he has killed just to get that good at using his power. It is something Yuki boasts about proudly without any shame at all. Then the red servant manages to loop one of the threads around Shin's neck and prepares to finish him off. Meanwhile, Ikai keeps eliminating Green faction players in the area one after another until he grows tired of it and decides to finish off Asuka. She tells him she will see him in hell and says goodbye to everyone, including her baby Taro. But right at that moment, Yuri arrives and launches a powerful kick that sends Ikai flying to the side, saving Asuka just in time. Yuri tells Ikai that woman is a wonderful mother. These words do nothing to soften him at all. He responds that he will send the baby to the grave right alongside her soon enough. This pushes Yuri completely over the edge and she throws herself at him to fight. Ikai is genuinely surprised by how strong Yuri is, though he underestimates her for a moment and tries to grab her. But this is actually a strategy Yuri and Akira had planned together. The natural instinct when you grab something is to pull it toward you. So the moment Ikai grabs her, she uses that momentum to drive her knee straight into him and break free. Once she has the advantage, she multiplies her physical abilities fully and hits him over and over until he ends up on the ground somewhat wounded. Despite this, Ikai gets back up smiling and completely ready to fight again. Meanwhile, the scene changed to Shin. Jerk cuts Yuki's attack on Shin by pushing him away with his barrier power, and Yuki changes his target. He throws a blade toward the young girl Erika to kill her, and Shin throws himself directly in front of it to take the hit for her. In that moment, Shin remembers his older brother from when he was small. His brother was an unbeatable wrestler whom Shin admired enormously. But his brother died in a traffic accident and ended up donating his heart to Shin, who had been gravely ill. That way his brother and he would always form a team and always be together. And it is finally because of that memory that Shin is able to use his power to genuinely defend someone else. Just as Yuki's blade is about to reach him, Shin activates his ability and forms an impenetrable full-body armor around himself. Using this armor, he breaks free of all the fiber threads and drives Yuki hard into the ground, leaving him completely out of the fight. Meanwhile, Kuroa is carrying out another plan entirely. It turns out the brothers had a spy planted inside the enemy faction who they plan to use to attack Shirasagi from behind. However, shortly after we see that this spy has already been captured by the green team thanks to Ringo's power. The man refuses to cooperate or say anything until Ringo tells him she trusts they will win because of Akira. He then asks for some water and Ringo goes to get it, asking Shirasagi and another man to give her time to handle the spy. Suddenly, the green leader receives a call from Jerk warning him that enemies are causing serious problems everywhere. This alarms Shirasagi greatly because he cannot understand how they are moving so fast if the spy has already been captured. But when Ringo returns to the tree where the man was tied up, she finds him murdered. The killer turns out to be none other than Momoko, the old woman nobody had ever suspected, who had spent a long time earning everyone's trust inside the group. At that point, we see a flashback of Akira and Yuri from right before they separated at the start of the King's game. Akira asks Yuri to focus on Kuroa since he is the real brain behind everything the Reds do. But Yuri knows that Ikai is heading toward Asuka and does not want anything to happen to her because she has a baby to take care of. Frustrated by how detached Akira seems, Yuri confronts him and says to just ask Ringo for help since she will not say no to anything. He tells her that Ringo already has a different role in the strategy. This makes Yuri question whether he is really just using everyone around him. After that, Yuri runs off on her own to find Asuka, and Akira separates from her to put a backup plan into motion. A moment later, he sees small swords flying toward him and dodges at the last second. Madoka appears. Akira fires the cannon at the tree right behind him, but this only gives Madoka an advantage since the falling wood breaks apart into small swords that he converts and uses to wound and corner Akira against a tree. Madoka tries to intimidate him, but Akira holds to his word that Madoka is no threat to him as a rival. Suddenly, Madoka senses someone very close by and tells Akira to move away. At that moment, Rindo attacks from a nearby tree but narrowly misses, and Madoka steps in because he wants to be the one to defeat Akira himself. Faced with this, Akira and Madoka decide to team up against the assassin. This was actually part of the plan Akira had worked out with Ringo beforehand. She had informed both of them where Akira would be positioned so that Madoka could form a team with him instead of Yuri if anything went wrong. Rindo's power appears to be the same as Madoka's on the surface, and on top of that he is a highly skilled swordsman. But then something changes. He begins launching bursts of completely razor-sharp air that force both of them to retreat into the forest for a moment. There they figure out that his power is only the sword itself, which means there must be a separate mechanism allowing him to launch that cutting air from a distance. They map out a 4-step plan to take him down and go back to find him. Madoka immediately throws himself into close-range combat against Rindo, so he cannot launch the air attacks at such a short distance, while Akira hides behind a nearby tree and charges the cannon to fire at his blind spot. This appears to be working, but when Akira fires the cannon, it destroys the tree without wounding Rindo at all. Rindo counterattacks and leaves Akira badly hurt on the ground, but the plan is not finished because there is a 5th step. Akira gives Madoka a signal to look at the pieces of wood that flew into the air from the destroyed tree. Madoka converts them all into swords and kicks them directly at Rindo. The assassin goes down, defeated. While all of that is happening, Renka has already massacred dozens of Green faction players, and only the religious woman is left, badly wounded. Before dying, she activates the power of her doll and launches it directly at Renka, snapping her neck completely backward. However, Renka simply stands back up as if nothing happened and twists her own head back into place. At that moment, Rin appears before Renka can finish killing the religious woman, and the two of them face each other. Renka begins attacking Rin, and Rin protects herself using the blades we saw earlier. But her power turns out to be something more special than that. Renka's toys attack Rin from all sides and wound her severely, leaving her body covered in blood. Renka believes she has won. But right then Rin activates a new power and throws her own blood at Renka, which instantly transforms into sharp blades. Renka is badly wounded, and Rin chains her to a nearby tree before going after the real enemy. In a nearby forest, Rin finds a young girl sitting beside a box. She drives a blade straight through the box, and inside turns out to be the player who is giving Renka her invincibility, since the girl was the one responsible for bringing the toys to life. Once the man inside the box dies, Rin turns to the girl and explains that she made a deal with the Green faction to save her own neck. If the Greens win, they will tell Mion that Rin was actually one of their own, working as a spy inside the enemy faction. That way Rin wins and stays alive. But to make that work, she needs to eliminate the one loose end remaining, the only witness left, which is the girl herself. Meanwhile, Seidu is desperately defending against Kamui using his endless arrows, but the old man dissolves every single one of them effortlessly. After fighting for a long time, Seidu accepts that he cannot win this and decides to sacrifice himself to buy time for his companions. Before he arrived here, his life was genuinely terrible and he was always getting other people into trouble, but these people accepted him and looked after him. So Seidu prepares to keep Kamui occupied for as long as he possibly can, but right at that moment Akira appears. He tells Seidu that Yuri is with Asuka and they need help there. He asks Seidu to go to her while he takes care of the old man himself. Once Seidu leaves, Akira tests Kamui's power by throwing a small stone at him. It dissolves the moment it touches his hand. From this, Akira understands that the old man's ability must involve some kind of chemical reaction, which also explains the armored suits his teammates wear. However, Kamui notices that Akira is genuinely interesting and that Kuroa was right to be suspicious of him. He asks Akira what he plans to do in his current state when he cannot use the cannon whenever he wants. This puts Akira on alert. The old man launches his attack and declares Akira his new toy to have fun with, but then something completely turns the fight around. Akira suddenly pulls out Rindo's sword and shows it very clearly to Kamui, which makes Kamui believe that Akira is able to copy the abilities of others. Using that belief, Akira gains access to the ability of another assassin, which allows him to launch cutting strikes from a sword made of pure air, and he lands clean hits on Kamui from a distance. The plan works perfectly. Akira had used the ambiguity surrounding the rumor that his power was not the cannon to make every enemy believe it could be absolutely any type of ability at all. This let him use Rindo's ability to fight and win from long range. Akira picks up Kamui's phone afterward, and it registers that Kamui has lost the fight against him. Meanwhile, Shirasagi and his group are discovering that the assassin who killed the spy is someone they never would have suspected. The mysterious figure reveals herself as Momoko. She finds the green leader alone and attacks him. He defends himself and Ringo along with another man quickly arrives to help. It turns out that the reason the woman was doing all of this is that she found out the Red faction leaders Ikai and Kuroa are actually her sons, and she wants to help them. At that moment, she raises the same cannon that Akira uses and points it at the baby she is carrying in her arms, which turns out to be Asuka's son Taro. She tells Shirasagi that if he does not surrender, she will kill the child. Shirasagi has no choice and throws his own phone away, eliminating himself from the game. Even so, Momoko does not consider the fight finished and decides to keep taking down as many members of the rival faction as she can. Kuroa believes he has just won the game. But Mion tells him that is not the case because the king has not been eliminated at any point. This reveals that the Green faction had never chosen Shirasagi as their king, and Akira appears right beside Kuroa at exactly that moment. Shortly after, Ringo pursues Momoko to try to save Taro and prevent the red team from claiming victory. But Momoko spots the girl and starts attacking with her cannon. Ringo decides to copy her power just as Akira had told her to do. In doing so, she discovers that although her shot only has 1/10 of the power, it fires 10 times faster. With this, she decides to fight and asks Momoko to first put Taro somewhere safe, so they can face each other without putting the baby in danger. The older woman agrees, and both of them start firing at each other with their cannons, filling the whole area with rubble and thick dust. Using the reduced visibility, Momoko circles around behind Ringo and slams her from behind with her cannon arm, knocking her flat to the ground. She then keeps hitting her over and over until Ringo is very weak, convinced that the girl does not have enough determination to actually fire back. Momoko then tells her she is going to save Taro and fix the mistakes of her past. But Ringo refuses to let her take him. So she fires into the wall right behind Momoko to make it look as if the baby has been crushed under the falling debris, hoping Momoko will panic and not take him. The woman goes sprinting desperately through the rubble trying to find Taro, but right there she falls directly into Ringo's trap. Ringo had been using her shots to carefully reshape the terrain so that Momoko would have no way of telling where she had left the baby, and while Momoko was distracted, Ringo had already moved him. This forces Momoko to throw her phone in desperation, eliminating her from the game. But Momoko takes advantage of a moment when Ringo is distracted picking up the phone from the ground and tries to smash a rock into her head purely out of selfish desperation to get the baby back. Ringo responds by firing behind Momoko to trigger a cascade of stones that comes down and traps her under them, pinning her far away from Taro. On the other side, Yuri is still fighting Ikai when Madoka and Shin arrive to support her. Shin relays a message to her from Akira, which is that he wants her to survive so he can apologize to her properly once all of this is over. On his end, Akira faces Kuroa directly, but Kuroa already has a plan ready, and a large number of enslaved players suddenly appear surrounding Akira from all sides. Kuroa believes that whatever Akira's power is, it is completely useless in this kind of situation. The battle between them begins. Akira tries firing the cannon directly at Kuroa right from the start, but Kuroa deflects it using one of Seiko's heavy balls, revealing that she is among the enslaved fighters. Kuroa is controlling her actions completely. He commands her to throw another ball. This time Akira dodges it, and then another enslaved player steps forward and dissolves the heavy object. Akira tries to fire near that player, but in that moment he sees the man desperately begging for his life. This confirms to Akira that what Ringo told him earlier was completely true. She had explained that Ikai and Kuroa combined their abilities to create this system, and that this is exactly how they did it with the players they captured. Ikai attacks the prisoners with his terrifying power, and then Kuroa steps in to stop it, which makes those prisoners feel deeply indebted to him. That debt activates his power, which forces his debtors to repay what they owe him at any price, even with their lives. More enslaved players close in further around Akira. Kuroa boasts that he has everything completely under control. Akira asks him if that is what his kingdom consists of: total control over everyone using his power. This stops Kuroa for just a moment. Akira follows immediately with another question, asking whether Kuroa is not worried about what Akira knows. Akira believes he has found his enemy's critical weakness, and that weakness is arrogance. The brothers believe themselves superior to everyone, which is why they underestimated the Green Leader and never realized that his power could also be reflected back at them during the previous trial. However, Kuroa had already figured out that Akira was only stalling for time to let his allies defeat Ikai, and that everything he was saying was a trap. In fact, Kuroa had given him all that time on purpose, because his own power had already activated. A chain appears around Akira's neck, binding him the same way the others were bound, and he becomes one of Kuroa's debtors. Since the debt is a relatively small one, Kuroa cannot force him to risk his life, but he can take away the use of one of his legs. Chains appear immediately and lock Akira's leg in place, while all the other enslaved players slowly close in on him. This is the exact moment Kuroa has been waiting for. He knows about a second ability Akira has, the one the informant that Yuki brought to the base revealed to him some time ago. A flashback shows the moment Kuroa learned of this other power. Surrounded by innocent people he cannot bring himself to attack, Akira uses that teleportation ability and appears directly behind Kuroa. But Kuroa had been waiting for precisely this, and already had one of his men guarding his back. They seize Akira before he can use the cannon to get free, and he is completely exposed and helpless once again. With Akira fully immobilized, Kuroa steps forward and explains to him that his plan from the very beginning was to leave him with only one option in battle and then remove even that option. Everything was thought out and calculated. He knew Akira would use that ability, and now he is going to stab him with no way to escape. Kuroa draws a knife and drives it between Akira's stomach and chest, and Akira begins bleeding and collapses to the ground weakened. Kuroa declares the battle finished. But Akira has actually ended up exactly where he wanted to be. Throughout their entire conversation, he had been carefully planting specific memories and thoughts inside Kuroa's mind. For example, when Kuroa recalled how the Green King's ability could reflect his power back at him, he spent so much time thinking about that mediator ability that he eventually began associating it as the current king's power. But Shirasagi was no longer the king. By focusing on that ability so intently during their exchange, Kuroa had accidentally transferred it to Akira without realizing it. Akira announces the negotiation has failed, and uses Shirasaga's offensive power to launch Kuroa with a single blow straight into a tree, injuring him badly. Akira also realizes in that moment that this has stopped being a simple game for him. Something has changed. He genuinely wants to protect the people around him, and perhaps it is because of Yuri. The moment Kuroa slams into the tree, every chain around every enslaved player's neck disappears, and they are all freed. We then learn how Akira actually avoided being killed by the knife. Underneath his clothing, he had been wearing bags filled with the same meat that he and Yuri had brought back to the base some time ago. He knew a knife would be used because days earlier he himself had gone undercover in the Red base as a spy. Shin had managed to capture a Red faction slave hunter on one occasion, and Akira used this with Yuri's help. She imagined him transforming into that man instead of into Ringo, and using this he was able to enter enemy territory without being recognized. Once inside, he fed Kuroa partial information and carefully observed how he used his enslaved players and what kind of knife he carried. Step by step, Akira had been guiding Kuroa toward this moment without him ever noticing, so that his guard would be completely down when it mattered most. Kuroa is defeated, But before going down, he warns Akira that he has no chance whatsoever against Ikai. Cornering that man is nothing short of a death sentence. Shortly after, we see Yuri, Shin, and Madoka fighting Ikai together and managing to wound him once again between the three of them. But then something changes abruptly. Ikai begins losing control of himself, asking who these people are and saying they are not human. This bewilders all three of them. He then delivers a kick that completely twists Madoka's arm around and launches him into a wall. At that moment, Akira deactivates Kuroa's phone and heads off to find his teammates. Ikai pulls out a second phone he had hidden and speaks into it, asking Kuroa to keep building their kingdom there. We then see the past of both brothers. They grew up in a facility for abandoned children where they quickly became close friends. Many children lived there and Momoko cared for all of them as if they were her own. But the director of that place was a cruel man who only cared about money and treated the children like insects or human garbage. The dream both of them shared from that time was to build a free kingdom of their own, like the one from a fairy tale picture book about insects that Kuroa had shown Ikai when they first met. These memories awaken Ikai's true power, which activates when he accumulates the greatest amount of pain and rage. He knocks Yuri aside and then attacks Shin even through his armored ability, sending him flying with a single blow. Ikai turns back around and sees that Yuri is still on her feet. He tells her he felt one of his arms crack, then he explains something from his past. In another memory, the facility director found the picture book the two boys would read together and began harshly scolding Kuroa for having it. The man threw the book on the floor and screamed at both of them that they were less than animals because they had been abandoned. He beat them as he usually did, and then after a while he stomped on the book and destroyed it completely. When Ikai saw this, rage and pain surged through him so powerfully that he picked up a nearby ashtray and brought it down on the director's skull. After that incident, Ikai lost control more and more every time the memory returned, and he began treating others as if they were not human. He tells all of this to Yuri. She responds that when she looks at his scars, she thinks of two little girls, herself and Riria. Ikai looks at her and asks if she thinks that girl will end up the same way he did. Yuri tells him that will not happen. And then she makes something very clear to him. It does not matter what anyone has ever said. Both he and Riria are human beings and she is not going to let him win. She says she has spent her whole life being told that things happen by chance or by accident, including her own birth, but she is absolutely convinced she did not end up here because of fate. She found her way here somehow. So despite her completely destroyed arm, she loads everything into one punch and hits Ikai with the same force he used on her. In one instant, both of them strike each other with everything they have. The bones in Yuri's arm begin breaking from the impact. This stuns Ikai completely, because he cannot understand how she is still going with only one arm left and that arm already falling apart. But the blow also fractures the bones in his own arm, and he steps back for a moment. He sees that despite the pain and the injuries, she is still standing and still coming forward, and he cannot figure out how that is possible. Yuri tries to attack again, but he dodges and begins a new burst of strikes that she absorbs while defending with only one arm. For a brief moment, we see the wounded children inside both of them connect with each other. The small Ikai asks Yuri if she does not feel any pain. She answers that it is the opposite, it hurts her enormously. Then she turns it back on him and asks whether he truly feels nothing at all, or whether that is just an excuse to run from his own pain. These words make his heart stir. The young Yuri continues and tells him she has absolutely no intention of losing to someone like him. The adult Yuri hits Ikai hard again, and his arm begins to give way while he goes still. She keeps telling him that whether they want to feel or not, they are both human, and she is going to save Riria. Then the small Yuri steps toward Ikai and tells him quietly, while touching his shoulder, that she is deeply sorry it is too late to save him. She offers to help him end his pain. He does not stop her. She hits him directly in the chest. Nothing happens at all. Her power has vanished. This is because Kuroa, using a second phone he had hidden in his clothing, spent 50 points from Mion's system to deactivate an enemy player's ability. Using that same phone, he contacts other members of his team and has them activate the towers to start generating points. Akira had lowered his guard, believing that Kuroa's phone was permanently gone and that his power had disappeared. But it was not gone at all. With no power protecting her, Ikai loses control again and hurls Yuri across the area with a single punch, sending her crashing into a wall behind her. Just as he is about to finish her off, Akira's voice comes through the loudspeaker. He spent his own points to broadcast to everyone. He tells Ikai that he has defeated Kuroa and that if Ikai wants the true king of the green faction, it is not Shirasagi. He challenges him to face him directly. This news hits Ikai hard. He cannot imagine the purpose of building a kingdom without his brother, but he accepts the fight in the end because he intends to personally destroy whoever took Kuroa's life from him. Akira then asks to hear Yuri's voice to confirm she is still alive. Ikai walks over to her, gives her a slap in the face to wake her up, and holds his phone close to her ear so she can hear Akira. She immediately asks Akira the most important question of all, whether he is actually coming there to take her place. He answers yes. All the other players in the area hear that Akira is about to fight the Red King directly and that Shirasagi is fully alive. Shortly after, Akira arrives ready to fight, with Yuri beside him since they have been secretly practicing something together. Ikai immediately launches himself into the attack to destroy whoever took his brother from him. Akira activates a new power that completely exceeds his own abilities. This is something he planned with Yuri during one of their outings together. He would only need to hit Ikai a single time to beat him, and that single hit had to be delivered at the exact right moment, with all of the force that Yuri could imagine him possessing. Thanks to what she visualizes, Akira strikes Ikai with a power greater than either of them could produce alone, even though Akira himself cannot physically move from the spot to deliver a normal attack. The brutal blow sends Ikai crashing to the ground with tremendous pain. But he manages to get up one more time. Akira also fell from the impact, sitting on the ground with his fist torn open, watching what happens next with absolute fear. But Ikai rises only to say one thing. He tells Akira to make sure that Yuri looks after those two little girls who remind him of himself. Then he collapses again, and his phone emits the sound of complete elimination. With Ikai out of the game, the green faction erupts in celebration and shouting. Akira manages to find Yuri and apologizes to her. She tells him she trusted he would get there in time. Then Mion appears with a group of guards. She tells Akira there is one final mission from the king of the game, collecting his prize and talking about the future. The guards begin taking the wounded players away to be treated, and Mion heads off toward a nearby tower to wait. A while later, Akira is resting and recovering by a river when Amodo appears on the other side of the water out of nowhere. He tells Akira that he owes him 200 points for his contribution to what happened and confesses that he watched everything. He says that Yuri's power is interesting, but Akira's power he considers something truly incredible. He says he wants Akira's help for another mission. This puts Akira on edge and he starts wondering exactly what Amodo saw, where he was positioned, or what his power actually is. Amodo then tells him that he knows very well what his real ability is, and that at this particular distance, Akira will not be able to dodge in time. He immediately summons the cannon in his arm and fires at Akira from close range, leaving him very badly wounded. Before walking away, Amodo tells him he owes him 200 points in his life, but that his real and only objective is to kill Mion. Since Akira is about to go meet her, Amodo asks him to help with that task, because the program and all these games mean absolutely nothing to him. Amodo walks away. Akira is left lying there unconscious, asking himself what he missed in his plan that led things to end up this way. A new morning comes. Akira wakes up in his bed in the real world as if nothing happened at all. But his heart is searching for something, a game that makes him overcome real obstacles and face real enemies with a real goal. He gets ready to go to school again, but this time instead of crossing the road, he heads into an arcade. After a while, he grows tired of being there and makes his way to the top of a large building that looks like an observation tower. Moving through the crowd gathered there, he finds Yuri, who recognizes him immediately. She lights up the moment she sees him and leaps into his arms without even thinking about it. And that is where the season ends. If you made it this far, drop a comment and let me know what you thought. Do not forget to leave a like, it helps the channel more than you think. Subscribe to Hakai Realm and hit the bell so you never miss a recap. Until next time.